Well, next on our program, before lunch, we've got a group of students, teachers, and a superintendent from Michigan Center High School. I'd like to do a little introduction, but first, specifically, two of the student leaders that helped put on their mini drug summit in the spring are here to present. Madison Palacios, hope I didn't murder that name. Also Brett Haynes, excellent job in the spring. And also the teacher leader Matt Damaris, Principal Lisa Falasco, and Superintendent of Michigan Center Public Schools Scott Cozio. But I'd like just to talk a little bit about them. The Michigan Center leadership class is a true asset to the Michigan Center High School and community. The work that these students perform reaches not only students throughout our district as well as the Michigan Center community, but it stretches out into the greater Jackson County. In an effort to bring the message of how harmful drugs and addiction can be to young people, 5 leadership students worked in collaboration with their teacher, Mr. Matt Damaris, and Principal Mrs. Lisa Falasco to bring an all-day drug summit of their own to their peers at Michigan Center High School. Arrangements were made to bring in multiple speakers to deliver the message through the experiences of first-hand users. 9th through 12th grade students were able to select 3 breakout sessions from a menu of over 8 options. Lunch was arranged for every student, as well as a student celebration to end the day with music and inflatables. Students' response to the Michigan Center Drug Summit could be summed up through the thoughts of one 11th grader who said, "This was the best day I have ever had at school." With that, I welcome Michigan Center students and teachers up to the podium.
Well, while they're getting situated, I'll go ahead and kick this off. My name is Scott Cozio. I'm superintendent, as Jerry said, and couldn't be more proud to be here because last year we were in this room, sat right over here, and had 5 students with us, and talked to them about what are we going to do with today. You can come and sit here and listen. You can doodle on your notepads. You can do whatever you want to do. But what are you going to do at the end of this day? We're not going to take you out of school to go and listen and come back and share it with a few people. We want to come back and share it with the whole school. So the kids had a pretty big chore. And I think they were a little intimidated, actually. When we talked about that, I don't think they were expecting that. Thinking, oh, day out of school, right? I get to go listen to other people talk about things that maybe not necessarily impact me. But man, when we left here last year, we didn't have a plan, but we had impact. And that really started for me with that guy right there. Mike Hurst was in my office when we were going through replacing the lights at Michigan Center. And after the end of every meeting, Mike would say, hey, I'd be more than happy to come talk to the kids about abuse and addiction. And I did not know Mike's story, I'll just be honest. And as I've learned Mike's story over the years, I knew we had to do something. And I am not by any means taking credit for all of this, because I need to get it to these people because they're the ones that did it. But Mike is the one that's keeping this going, and I know everybody's referencing him. And those of you that don't know Mike need to know Mike and know his family and know the story that that they're telling and the positive results that are happening. So it's a privilege for us to be here to talk about it, because this is just an extension of the work that Mike's doing and the other schools in the county are doing. We did not think of this on our own. We had help specifically from Columbia Central Schools. And I think it's just a tribute to the public schools, the 13 connected community schools in the county that are working together to provide the best options to our students. So this is a real tribute to that. The commitment, like I talked about, was we wanted to do more than just have the kids come to this and tell their friends. We wanted them to come to this and tell everybody and do something about it. And the benefits, we always talk about in school, because we don't have, it's not like when a lot of us were in school, believe me. We have a lot on our plates, and there's a lot of accountability in schools now, which is great. I'm not complaining about that. But trying to figure out how we're going to spend a whole day, right? You tell a teacher you're going to take a whole day away from them. That doesn't generally go over too well. But when we talk to them about the benefits of what this could bring and the sustainability that we were planning for this is not a one-time deal. We are planning to do this multiple times. We actually have 2 students that weren't involved last year. We have Bria Cole and Cameron with us that are juniors and sophomores that will be carrying this torch after these students leave us. So we're trying to build the capacity and sustainability for long-term impact with this model that we've put together. So really the benefit was, what are we going to get out of it and what do we want? And it was really about what the kids were going to design and put together. We knew as adults we had to step back. As much as we feel like we're right in with what the students know and how they're feeling, we don't. I mean, let's just be honest, we're doing our best. But these 2 are the ones, and the other 3 were the ones that really know what we needed to do, and we did it. And I'll end with, I know most of the kids at Michigan Center, and hopefully that doesn't sound bad, but there's 1,400 of them, and I know most of them. But I sought out 5 that I didn't know at all, that I hadn't really spoken with or not real familiar with. And so after this event, during the celebration time at the end of the day, and that's where that quote comes from at the end. And one of the kids asked me who said that, and I was like, I don't know. But it was a student, it was an 11th grade student. And I talked to all 5 of them, and all 5 said they couldn't believe the impact that the speakers that we had made. And then the other thing that was really impressive is 2 of them said, you know, we get the celebration thing, but you know, it's kind of long. Could we have had another session? Sure. So that's something that we're looking at moving to the future. So I'm going to turn it over to Lisa Flasco and Mr. Damaris and let them really get into the meat of what we did. So thank you.
Which one? I don't know if I'm doing it. You do it. I don't want to mess it up. Before I begin on my section, I have to go back to last year on this day when we were all here. And I really have to go back to Mike and Rindy Hurst and their family, and I include you in their family. I know they would want me to. Last year when we sat here, the impact of what was shared and what our students were charged with, it was profound. And we had to make a decision when we came back, what are we going to do with this? How will this impact Michigan Center? And I really have to recognize Mike and Rindy Hurst for this. And I know we're going to say their name a lot today, and it's not because everybody else isn't contributing. We are. But it's this man's passion and perseverance that we're all riding on right now in this county. And if it weren't for you, Mike Hurst, I don't know that we would have this passion, and I don't know that we would be doing what we're doing. So I charge you to continue, and I want you to know how much it means to all of us. And just like earlier, if it's one student, we brought this back, and even, all of the work and all the time and all of the hours that we put in to do this, if it only touched one student, it was worth every second of that. And I think that that's what we have to take away today as educators, those of you who are here, and I see lots of my friends here today. That's the difference, and that's what we have to keep in mind when we take it back to our buildings and back to our district. So what was really important to me after we left was the school culture piece. And I said to our students, I said, okay, how do we really know what we need? We're gonna plan this day, but we need to make sure that this day is going to benefit our students in particular. Our community is different than Northwest. It's different from Napoleon. It's different from Hanover Horton. We have some different issues that we're dealing with, so we want to make sure that it's going to have a direct impact for our students. We did a lot of discussion with all students. We did a lot of surveying with students, and we also surveyed staff. And it was really important for us to gauge, I need all of my teachers behind this. I need to know what our teachers who are dealing with students directly, they know a lot more than I do as far as what our students are dealing with. Tell us what we need. So when Mr. Damaris and our leadership students are creating our guests for that day, They know who we're seeking out. And that was the biggest thing for me as an administrator, really making sure that we're bringing relevant people in to talk. And I'm looking at Steve Sutka here because he was a big part in helping us do that, and I really appreciate that. So the culture piece is huge, and I know it seems simple, but my educators that are sitting here will understand how important that is. And then, as we kind of organized everything, having clear expectations. What are the roles? Mr. Damaris's role, our student roles. And then after we define those, still being flexible. And that was really important as well because ideas changed. We can't just create one thing and that was it. We had to really work within our parameters. And I think that that's important to bring back to your district as well. And then we have the piece as a principal, and even as a teacher, we have control issues, right? So it's just our nature, that's what we do. But it was really hard to just step back and say, okay, I have to trust Damaris, I have to trust my students to do this. I am now here to support them, and that is my role, because we needed the ownership from the students. Our students hear from me all the time. They hear from our teachers all the time. But when you have your fellow peers talking about it, leading it, sending out letters and surveys and questionnaires and filling out your slip for the day, and that's all coming from your peers, that carries a lot more weight. Let your students do this. They will buy in 10 times more if they're the ones leading the way and trusting them to do so. So I think that those pieces were really big up front. And then we're lucky that we have an advisory within our day. I hate to say homeroom because it's really not. It's a half hour, 10:30 to 11, and it's packed with very beneficial things. So I have this window of time that I actually write the lesson plans for every week and email out to my teachers. And Mr. Damaris said, we really should front load this day. So for several weeks before our big drug summit day, we were putting in different videos and different from the folders that you have in front of you, that information there, with scripts for the teachers to work from, discussion questions, really building the capacity and awareness of our students before we sat in front of our presenters that day. Our presenters complimented us at the end of the day with how well prepared our students were. I think that was a big part of why and how we were prepared for that. And it really made our students feel that they had value and they could participate in the discussions as well. And then the follow-up piece, using that same time, the advisory time, after the presentation was over the following weeks to follow up, again, using a lot of the literature, a lot of the information that are in your folders today in order to do that. That was a big piece for us. So my umbrella is a lot bigger, and I'm getting ready to turn it over to Mr. Damaris. And a lot of you in this room know Matt Damaris, but I have to tell you, every school should have a Matt Damaris. And I know that most of us do, right? And I know you do. Principals in here, I'm looking at Scott Buechler there. I know everybody has a Matt Damaris in their building, and you have a teacher that is a true leader, and they're passionate, and they have the energy to do it. And I'll tell you what, this guy here is my lifeline, so I'm very honored to introduce Matt Damaris to you.
All right, quite the introduction. I've been at Michigan Center for 10 years now, and I have to say that this drug forum that we ran was probably one of the most impactful days for our students that I've ever seen. It was awesome. I am privileged. I get to work with great administrators that offer tons of support and awesome young men and women like Brett and Maddie and Bria and Cameron. That's just a few of them that I get to work with every day. I want to thank Mr. Jarzinka and Mike and everybody that's putting this day on. I know it's been a ton of work, and it's such a great day. It's been awesome, and thank you for being here as well. I see a lot of great people from different agencies. I see my big brothers, big sisters people out kind of all over the room here. It's great to see them and everybody else. I get to see a lot of people that presented for us at Michigan Center, like Chris and like Mike. And Mr. Jester back there who sent a few of his representatives, and Mr. Jarzinka who took time out of his day to come talk to our students, because ultimately we think that educating the youngsters, the youth, is where we're going to get a lot of this. And the more proactive that we can be as educators, whether it's about English or math or science, or about drug use and addiction, the more proactive we can be, that's where we're going to tackle this issue. And it's great to see some other schools here. I see, I'm going to leave some out, I know I am, but with Northwest and Vandercook Lake and the kids from Western over here, and Leslie and Napoleon and Springport, and Grass Lake even back there. I'm sure I missed some, but it's great to see that because we hope that you can learn something because this is some powerful stuff. We are going to do a similar day in the future. Consider this an open invitation to anybody. We love to have people there, different agencies, different speakers, presenters, different schools that need help. Leslie and Napoleon were at our day last year, and anything we can do to help would be, we want to help with. So I was supposed to talk about a brief history of how our Michigan Center Drug Forum came to be. And how it started was we sent 4 students here last year, and we sent 4 students on the same day to Columbia Central High School to see how they run their forum day. They were tasked with how are we going to bring this back to Michigan Center. And we got back together, we had the planning committee was formed, and it took off. Okay, and the part about trust and delegating was awesome. Okay, yes, I oversaw it, but with Maddie and Brett and, oh geez, Molly and Brian and whoever else isn't here right now, they really ran with this. And this is what worked for us. Okay, this worked in our schedule, this worked for our population, and I can't stress enough, if you are an educator or if you're going to be presenting at any of these schools, because I know a lot of you will be invited, I'm sure, it's whatever works for your population and it works for your schedule. So I'm not saying this is the perfect method. It worked for us, and we were very proud of it, but you definitely have to be flexible. So once our planning committee was formed, we had monthly meetings. We updated each other. We delegated different tasks. We worked. We had different guests come in, whether it was administrators. I think Mike was at one of those planning meetings. Columbia Central student leaders came over and told us about their day a little bit more, and we got work done. Some were during school hours, some were after, before school, but it was a lot of fun seeing these students really run with this topic and the impact that they know that they could have. It did take a lot of time, organization, everything was thought through very well, and eventually I'm gonna let Brett talk about why we did it, and I'm gonna let Maddie talk about how we did it. So last thing I just wanted to talk about is we let in. All the work was put in, countless hours led up to the week, and then led up to the day. There were a lot of nerves, there was a lot of excitement, and we knew that we could have an impact. And that's what these kids did a great job understanding. And then it was go time. So Brett and Maddie are going to talk about go time and how this was done. So I'm going to hand it off now to Brett Haynes. Brett Haynes is a junior at Michigan Center. He's his student council president of his class. His class president, he's on the golf team, he's on the basketball team. He's a pretty cool dude. So I'm going to hand it over to Brett Haynes.
Hello, I'm Brett Haynes, the cool dude, apparently. Thank you, Mr. Damaris. I am a 16-year-old junior at Michigan Center, and I'm going to be talking to everybody about why it's important to educate kids about drugs. I'm just going to kind of go through the bullet points here. So, first step, awareness. The first step we need to take is creating awareness. Last year, before I came to the drug summit last year, I hadn't been exposed to any of this whatsoever. I had no prior knowledge of drugs or heroin. It wasn't even a big deal to me. I thought Jackson was all sunshine and rainbows, and that drugs were worlds away and something that I only could see in movies and things like that. And I soon discovered that that was not the case. It is in our home, and that's a reality, and that's hard to take in, but that's a fact. It's at our doorstep in Jackson right now, and we need people to recognize this problem and stop it now before it snowballs into something much worse. My next reason here is to just be a good friend, citizen. And I want everybody to do me a favor and close their eyes for a moment. And we're all here for a reason, and that's because we don't want these drugs ruining the lives of anyone, especially the people we care about the most. Now, while your eyes are closed, imagine a teenager you care about, whether it be a brother, sister, son, daughter, friend in general. And imagine drugs affecting their lives and what it would do to you. That's hard for anyone to take in, and it's our duty as that person's true friend to guide them down the right path and away from these horrific drugs. My next bullet point here is knowledge. We need, and this might be my most valued point, the one I care about the most, we need to create knowledge in kids today. This is the main reason we're all present today, to learn, and that's what our kids need. They need to learn about drugs, the side effects, the addiction. They need to learn just how bad drugs really are, and it's now our job to teach them. If kids knew how bad these drugs can mess with their life, I truly believe they would stay away. It's all about providing them with those facts and that knowledge of knowing just how much harm drugs can cause. Oblivious teens, this one just kind of makes me laugh, being an oblivious teen myself. I am, obviously, I'm involved in sports, friends, social life. Everything is about social life. This relates back to the awareness, but we need to turn to those kids that live life in their own little bubble and get them to put their priorities elsewhere. And that could be including with this drug. That's what I'm bringing it back to. We aren't going to go very far if these kids are going to offer our knowledge about drugs. They're completely oblivious to the reality around them. It would be huge to try and get these kids aware of this problem and present them with the information necessary so they can realize just how awful these drugs are. And my last bullet point here is, what future and legacy are we going to lead? I'm 16 years old, and obviously I still have a lot of life to live, but I do plan on having a family someday. I have a 13-year-old sister at home, and to think about my kids in the future and to think about my little sister growing up, and it scares me to death to think about if she were to be walking around Jackson and for some reason there's a heroin dealer, and what if her friends have it? I'm not saying that they will, and I'm not saying that she will, but these are all possibilities, and that just is terrifying to me to think about all these little kids coming up. Things that I never had to deal with, but who knows, in the future, that could definitely be a possibility. And I'm sure that scares all of you. I see all the adults in the room that I sure have kids at home, and it scares them as well. And that brings me back to us being here today. We are the first step in resolving this horrid problem. The future needs us to leave a legacy that emphasizes just how impactful drugs are. The change starts here with us, and I hope it doesn't end. And now I'm going to hand it off to Maddie Palacios to talk about how. She can clarify.
Hi everyone, my name is Maddie Palacios. I was a part of the group that went to Columbia Central to see their Drug Forum Day. The first thing we did, as Mr. Demare said, is we combined our two committees, the one that went to Columbia Central and the one that came here, because we wanted to be able to have their knowledge with our organization skills to really have the impact work, to really make everything a go. And so in that committee, in our giant big committee now, we wanted to make a goal. We set a goal that we wanted to reach for this forum and what we wanted to do. And our goal was to provide impactful and meaningful discussion and education revolving around real-world issues for teenagers. That's what we came up with. And we wanted to make sure that it really focused around what Michigan Center needed. So with that said, we tried to have a main focus, something that we could kind of central everything around, and we made that focus for us, drugs and decision making. After we got that down, the next thing we did was discuss topics. And topics, that took a good amount of time to figure out what topics we wanted and what topics suited us. And so what we did was we had teachers, we had student council, we had leadership, we had just general student body come to us. We went to them and tell us what they thought were issues, what they thought needed to be addressed, things they seen, things they noticed, so we could really get these topics to affect us, make it meaningful to us. And after all that, we did narrow it down to 8 topics that we wanted to discuss. And we also had Mr. Hurst. We had people see him and how impactful he was, so we wanted to make him our keynote speaker. And I'll touch more on how we handled that later. But after we did that, we had to create a master schedule. And the master schedule, instead of trying to kind of do it all at once, the way we organized this is we just had an outer shell. We just did our general plan on what we wanted to do to not make it so overwhelming. And we knew we wanted the keynote speaker, and of course we wanted them. So we chunked out the time in the beginning of the day, a good amount of time for every student to be in the auditorium to hear Mike and the angels speak. We wanted to set the tone for the day. We thought it would be really important to make sure that everyone knew that this day was serious, and everyone kind of start the day with what we were going to talk about and the issues we were going to be covering. Know that it wasn't anything to mess around with. This was things that they needed to pay attention, they needed to learn, they needed to educate themselves and hear what people were saying to them. So after we got that all keynote, we knew what we wanted to do, then we had to do like the really little logistics and how we wanted to set it up. We had to decide half day, whole day, how many sessions, how long each session was, how do we want to split the students up. It was all that little stuff. How we did that is we did 35-minute sessions, we did 3 sessions, and we wanted to make sure one session was hearing Andy's Angels. We wanted to make sure every student had at least one session where they heard the stories of the angels. That was how we set that up. And then after that, we also had Mr. Cozio. He had the idea of having the school provide a lunch. We had a barbecue-style lunch, and the reason we thought it would be a good idea, or he thought it would be a good idea to do that, is because it made us feel really valued and very important. Like, this day was for us. This day was a day for us to learn, and it was building and just how teachers would have like a career day, like a career building or a character building day. Like, that's what we wanted to have. We wanted to feel important. He thought it was a good idea to do that for us, and it was just my opinion. It made a more of an impact than you would think it did to have it set up like that, like we were important in adults and this was a real thing we were doing. We also decided that for the second half of the day, to kind of lighten the mood, because we are dealing with high schoolers and freshmen are 14 years old, because it is such heavy information, we decided having half the day be like a reward, like a celebration day, would make it so these kids weren't going home like sad and like really mulling over the topics we talked about. So we had half the day be a celebration day where we brought in like inflatable toys, we had a movie going, like the gyms were open for everyone to kind of soak it up but still like relax a little bit. Once all that was done and we had that out, we had to just like know the little stuff. We had to know where we were putting each speaker. We had to make sure every speaker was okay with coming, check on their dates, make sure everything was fine. If they needed a laptop, we made sure they had a room that had a laptop and a projector for them, all that kind of stuff. Then we sent out student surveys. And the surveys had all 8 topics, and the students went through and they picked 3 of the topics that they were most interested in. And with that information, we started sorting. We sorted each grade into their wanted topics. We filled up a classroom, and then we moved to the next grade, and we started adding more and more and more until eventually all the sessions and all the topics, all the classrooms, everything was filled. Then it got even more intense because we had to make individual schedules for each student. So they never were lost. They always knew what time they were changing. They knew what classroom they were supposed to be in, what they were learning about. They had everything right in front of them. We color coordinated each paper with each session time, and we went through each class list and made sure their schedule was on point, cut them out, stapled together, the whole deal. That took a lot of time. Rome wasn't built in a day. That took forever. After that, the day started getting closer, and we were about 3 days out, and we had to call our speakers again. We double verified. We made sure we had backup speakers just in case someone did like have an emergency pop up, so that way we had somewhere to put the students. We sent home parent letters, which was a lot of Miss Velasco and Mr. Damaris with that little like parent stuff. So we made sure those were printed out and sent out, and then just, again, final little things, like little details that you just have to go through and be like, okay, what are we doing for the speaker's lunch? Are we providing pens for them? Is there going to be people before that kind of introduce them? Are we going to put leadership students in charge of like making sure people aren't lost? Just all the little tiny things. That's what we did in like the last 3 days before the event. And when the day came, we just followed our skeleton schedule. We just made sure we followed time by time. Mike talked. People went to breakout sessions. Nobody was lost. We had people around the hallways just in case by chance you did get lost. And the day just went surprisingly very smooth, no hiccups. It was really great. And that's all I had. That's how we did it. Any questions for me can be discussed at the end. I'm going to hand it back over to Mr. Cozio.
And I'll touch on, yeah, teachers are sometimes control freaks, but what an awesome job You know, we gave it to the kids and they ran with it. Look at the skills that they learned. The skills that they learned about time management and organization and everything like that they don't sometimes get to do because they don't get to be in charge. So that was awesome. And I just want to touch on the topics that she talked about that we touched on. We're drinking and driving. Sam does an awesome job with that. Depression and suicide. We had people from Jackson Narcotics Enforcement team come in and speak to our kids. Overcoming adversity, alcohol, drugs, and sex abuse. Peer pressure, motivation through adversity. We had the Andes Angels, teen pregnancy, and prescription and gateway drugs. So those were our topics that we thought would be important for our students. You want to take it over? All right, deal.
So hopefully if you're worried about the future of us, you were just reinforced, because amazing. So I think at this point we'll go ahead and take questions, Mr. Jarzenka, and if anybody has any, the students are happy to respond, or any of us.
Any questions, Michigan Center? Yeah, I've got a question. I mean, Madison and Brett, very impressed. Wow, our future looks bright here in Jackson. A question I have for Madison is, you know, you get into these meetings to plan and prepare. What were some of the things that seem to be challenges, at least going into this planning of this event?
I would say a challenge starting off. When we first started, it's not usual for like students to have this much control. So we did look for a lot of guidance in the beginning, and like when we were giving tasks, like you guys need to find people. What are some topics? Like call people. We were all like, we have to call them. Like I don't even make my own doctor's appointments. What do you mean? So that was kind of hard in the beginning to be able to do things on our own and really take control of that. But once we got on a roll, once we started, the ball was rolling. It was smooth. It was really nice. Oh, now I can talk on the phone without a problem. I can call anybody. I get right to the point. It's great. I can make my own doctor's appointments.
Excellent. And Brett, how would you answer that question?
I would say for me was just to get everybody hyped up about it, I would say. Because, I mean, obviously kids, you hear drugs and they're like, oh, that's sad. But this is like an important day for us, and they need to recognize just how meaningful it will be to them. So that was probably like the big deal, was probably advertising the games and stuff after, more importantly, and then once they got there, realizing just how cool like listening to Andy's Angels were. Like I think, like Mr. Cozio said, that the kid wanted more sessions. Like how cool is that for a kid that's 14, 15, 16 years old to say, I want more sessions, not more time playing in the gym. Like that's awesome for me. Yeah.
Got a follow-up question? Oh, yes, Steve.
Yeah, first of all, I want to commend you guys for a great presentation. Outstanding. So thank you very, very much. I also want to adopt the student planning committee. Afterwards. I know there's several administrators here, and this would be helpful to me as well. Scott, you mentioned that it's a full day out of school class, out of school. How did you coach the staff, as far as dedicating a full day to this one item?
Well, I think Lisa touched on it a little bit. We wanted to definitely have their input. And, like we talked about with the students coming to this, and we wanted them to take this back to the students of Michigan Center. We also talked as the three of us, how are we going to take this back to the staff? Because we kind of saw a day like this coming. We'd heard the great results and impact that Columbia's day was making. And, they had it pretty well organized, and it was a nice model for us to follow. But how do you get the staff on board? Because we really needed them on board. Because, like Lisa said, this went on for probably, I'm almost guessing, like 6 or 7 weeks, both before as well as after. So it was their time. Lisa had to help them understand what we needed them to say to make this day beneficial and then also lasting. And I think I'll let her take it from there.
I think for me, it was, of course, that first staff meeting of why this, is this an issue? Do you ever hear your students talking about this in class? How many of you have students coming up to you seeking help, right? And we have, every teacher could answer that they had. So then it was getting them to understand, you have just as much of a role in this as any of us do. So what do you hear and what do you need? And almost making it like it was their idea in a way. And then making sure that we supported them in the before and after. It wasn't just one day. And our teachers, and any good teacher will tell you this, we don't want just one day. We are trying to build this into our culture and embed this mindset, and so we worked really hard and intentionally to do that. And that's where teachers will buy in, is if you can help them sustain it and provide them the support to do that. And we were specific. I mean, I scripted discussion questions and scenarios and types of answers, and gave them prompts if a teacher was stuck in what to say, because it's uncomfortable. And some teachers are better at these conversations than other teachers. So it really was being very careful with how you helped support them. And I think that that's where we, in the long run, benefited from.
Any other questions? Just one last question for both Madison and Brett. How did you feel about the reaction of your peers to the event?
I thought it was great. Me personally, being selfish, I was like, oh, this is sweet, because I knew what was going on the whole time, and we kind of kept it on the DL, I guess, with everybody else. But yeah, afterwards, talking to all my friends, before, I don't think they really knew what was going on. They're like, oh, this isn't gonna be fun. I don't even know if I should go to school. And I was like, come, you'll see how sweet it is. And that's exactly what they said after. It was hilarious. Talking to them after in the gym, they're like, I know this sounds weird, but I want to go back and listen to that one guy talk again. And I was like, yeah, I know, me too. I could do this all day. So that was really cool for me.
For me, it was a lot of the same thing. A lot of seniors are in Career Center, and so they were like, oh, well, I'm just not going to go. This is fine, I'll just skip that day of school. And I was like, no, don't, come, you're gonna like it. And they were like, no, and I was like, no, just do it. And then they did, and then even my guy friends, afterwards were like, he made me cry. And I was like, I told you to come, I told you it was gonna mean something. And yeah, I think the feedback from peers was just great. Everybody, I didn't hear one bad thing. Everyone thought, what we did was amazing.
And I think touching on that, we did a follow-up survey, a reflection piece for the students, and collected some data on the meaningfulness of the day. And it was amazing. And it was amazing just as a teacher hearing the kids come up and say, hey, my cousin's brother overdosed on heroin. Thank you. Now I know what to do. And I know one thing we didn't touch on was during lunch, we had different agencies set up booths, kind of like we have over there right now, where students could go talk to different people and be heard. And that was awesome. And I think it gave students a voice to say, hey, there's this in my house, what can I do? Or my dad, I see do this, what can I do? And at least we gave them some resources to go to talk about it, because a lot of times students just want to be heard, and we gave them that outlet for that.
Okay, this was really important in the students that we chose to answer that question. We wanted to make sure that the students that were out talking about it and promoting it represented all of our students, not just the jocks, not just the popular, not just the athlete, the band. We made sure that the people that were part of this were part of our whole culture within the school. So when you're selecting that group, make sure that's a big piece, because if you just have the popular kids, what's that going to do for the kids who aren't popular? Oh, it's just for them. We're getting excluded again, blah, 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 blah. It was for everyone.
I just had more of a comment here. We have school of choice now, and everybody's worried about their image, and everybody's fighting for those students to come to their school. And I'm really talking to all the school districts right now. Scott, Cozio, Lisa, Matt, Brett, and Maddie, they've all stepped up to the plate and said, hey, we're not going to worry about our image. We're not going to worry that people are going to say, oh my God, Michigan Center must have a huge drug problem because they're having this huge drug summit. No, they went above and beyond. They're not worried about their image. They're worried about the kids in their district. They're worried about the kids graduating from that district. And they're not worried about the money. So hats off to you guys. And I want to let any school district in this county know We'll be there anytime you want us there. It's an open invitation. We will be out there. We'll talk to your kids. We'll give them the real story. You might want to send a letter. You might want to send a letter home because we don't pull any punches, and it's real, and it has to be real, or it has no effect. Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
You guys also set a great example for Napoleon High School because they did something similar and had, a group of students that set it up. And I think you guys set a great example for them too. And you let an East Jackson kid come to Michigan Center and speak too, so that's rare.
Nice job. And anybody that needs more information, whether it's the schools, you can find my email address on the website or any of ours, or any of the agencies that would love to come to ours in the future, please, we'll be getting a hold of you, you get a hold of us, and definitely more information to come. So,
Thank you. Let's give another round of applause to Michigan Center. Wow, what an awesome job. What a great testament about our youth and our community making a difference for us. So thank you very much. Excellent job.